So I have an issue with sports media, and I am somewhat implicating myself in this as well, where we can take sort of this microgram of truth in a subject and then use it to spin off a bunch of false narratives and a bunch of false beliefs and a bunch of false ideas. And yes, there will always be that microgram of truth there, but it all almost operates on this false assumption that one thing is going to lead to another. Now, we all know what people say about people who assume things. It makes an ass out of you and me. And this is something that I feel like has gone on quite a bit with the media narratives that surround Russell Wilson. And again, I'm guilty of this somewhat as well because I am technically part of the media. One of the biggest Russell Wilson narratives where I feel like this issue is prevalent is his relationship surrounding his teammates. We have had some of Russell Wilson's teammates, cough, Richard Sherman, cough, come out and basically say that Russell Wilson is not a relatable teammate and that he is somebody who, if you want to get in touch with him, you have to go through his secretary. He won't give you his personal phone number. I don't know how much truth there is to that. I remember on that podcast, Marshawn Lynch was kind of laughing that off like that wasn't true, that Richard made that up. I feel like with Richard Sherman, there's clear personal history and vendetta there. I don't know what kind of beef those two may have had. I know there was beef on the field, certainly. Russell Wilson was always the victim of Richard Sherman's trash talk. But at the same time, man, there was something that went on the field between those two that clearly soured the relationship from Sherman's perspective. And I feel like he's really taken it to a much further level than he should have taken it. And he's aired out some of Russell Wilson's personal dirty laundry, and I don't feel like it was his place to do that. So when you have people like Richard Sherman go on and make these personal attacks against Russell Wilson, it's very easy material for the media to go and run off with. And now we hear all of these media narratives about Russell Wilson not being a relatable teammate and how teammates don't like Russell Wilson and that Russell Wilson views himself as superior to his other teammates. I personally feel like there is probably a microgram of that's true, just like I stated earlier, but you have a bunch of these media narratives where assumptions are being made, and when all these assumptions are being made, it's almost like a snowball effect, and you get these massive false narratives. And that's what I feel like is happening with Russell Wilson. Because for every one teammate in Richard Sherman that's come out and had things to say about Russell Wilson, you've had at least 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 that have come out in defense of Russell Wilson and have said that he is one of the hardest workers that they have been around, that he's somebody who does his best to relate to his teammates and tries to relate to guys who are even on the lowest level of the roster. I've heard many practice squad level players say that Russell Wilson was a key element in them finding their confidence as a young player. We've heard many of his former Seattle teammates come out in defense of him, DK Metcalf, Bobby Wagner, Tyler Lockett, and many others. And then here in Denver, plenty of his teammates have come out in defense of Russell Wilson. Jerry Jeudy's one, Melvin Gordon, who's not even here anymore, same goes for Bradley Chubb. Both of those guys, who are now former teammates of Russ, have come out in strong defense of him and said that he's an incredibly hard worker and somebody that is going to do whatever he can to put his team in a position to win. Then there are guys like Justin Simmons who've more recently come out in defense of Russell Wilson. So overall, there are way more players who are coming out and saying that these narratives surrounding Russell Wilson are simply not true than there are guys like Richard Sherman and some other guys as well who are coming out and just spurting this absolute false narrative surrounding Russell Wilson's character. And that's one thing that I feel like you cannot attack is Russell Wilson's character. Russell Wilson may be corny as hell. You can absolutely say that. He's somebody who's always going to keep an even level of thinking. That's from his work with Trevor Moawad, who is his personal life coach, basically, and a big mentor in his life. Unfortunately, for those who are not familiar, right before the 2021 season, Moad unexpectedly died of cancer. He didn't tell Russell Wilson or anybody that he was sick. So Moad's death really caught Russ off guard. And I feel like ever since then, Russell Wilson has kind of been personally trying to find himself again because he didn't have that main mentor and that support structure in his corner that he's always relied on. But in a video that Ryan Leaf actually put out, I believe he was filling in for Rich Eisen one day, he talked about Russell Wilson and how Trevor Moawad instilled in him to always keep this sort of even level of thinking and never get too high and never get too low. This is why we saw him at the end of that Colts game in that press conference still go out and say Broncos country, let's ride, and in that press conference after that bad loss. It's because for him, he never wants to get too high, never wants to get too low. He always wants to maintain this even level of attitude and even level of thinking. And sometimes that can be to his detriment. Moad allowed him to express that even level of thinking, but when it was necessary, also get emotional and turn those fiery juices on. And it felt like at times Russell Wilson needed to turn that on last year, and he didn't have that little voice in his head telling him to do so. This year, though, there are a lot of players that feel like Russell Wilson is going to bounce back, and they strongly believe in Russ and how hard he's working to bounce back this season, and Justin Simmons is one of them who recently spoke to Sirius Sports Radio. Let's take a look to what he had to say here. Now, this information is indirectly coming courtesy of a Bleacher Report article. So, if we come down here, Justin Simmons says, I know he's one of the hardest workers, if not the hardest worker I've ever been around and that I've seen, and his attention to detail and his preparation has already made me a better player being his teammate. And so I'm always going to put my full trust and confidence in him as my quarterback, and I can't wait to see what he looks like heading into year 2 with us. Now, at the end of the day, man, this is a results-oriented business, and on the field, the results weren't there for Russell Wilson. Now, Russell Wilson, just because of his corny attitude, has always kind of led into some of those memes and some of the hate and the personal attacks, but last year it went well beyond memes. This year, when he wasn't last year, I should say, when he wasn't performing on the field, it really opened that door up even more because, as many coaches will tell you, winning is the most effective deodorant in the entire NFL. When you're not winning, it leaves you exposed to a lot of this kind of stuff. Now, that's not going to defend the people who are personally attacking Russell Wilson. We see individuals who put Russell Wilson as the thumbnail for the Broncos being the team with the most arrests in the NFL since 2000. I talked about that in a previous video. That's just going way too far. But Russell Wilson also has to do his part to shut up the haters, and he has to perform on the field this year. The Broncos have given him all the resources necessary, at least on paper, to do so, with the hiring of Sean Payton, the revamping of the offensive line, the getting healthy receiving core, a revamped defense that was already good last year. But at the end of the day, it's all going to be on Russell Wilson to put it together and put the results on the field. If he can't do that, then I bet we're going to see Jarrett Stidham at some point for the Denver Broncos at quarterback in 2023. But it's clear that there are many teammates, including Justin Simmons, Jerry Jeudy, Garrett Bowles, and others that firmly believe in Russell Wilson and got his back no matter what as their quarterback. And Russell Wilson is my quarterback until he proves otherwise. And until he proves that he is not my quarterback. Until then, Russell Wilson has my back and my full support 100%. I'm curious, Broncos country, how do you guys feel about all of these media narratives surrounding Russell Wilson? And how much of it do you feel like is fair criticism? And how much of it do you feel like is just going way too far? Drop those comments down below, guys. I would love to hear your thoughts on this, as always. I'd love to have you guys join in on the conversation. Be sure to leave a like on this video, as well as subscribe and ring the bell so these videos appear in your notification feed. I would really appreciate it, guys. Those are 2 free and easy ways to share your support. It helps tell YouTube's algorithm to push us out to fellow members of Broncos country, just like you and me. And until next time, guys, this has been another episode of Denver Broncos Syndicate. I am your host, Gage Madrid, saying peace out.